Scientists with the Trace Evidence section of the GBI Division of Forensic Sciences have eyes for details. Theirs is tedious work, examining, in some cases, microscopic evidence such as hairs, fibers, glass, paints, plastics, and polymers. They also provide other services, including fracture match examinations and general materials identification. With the diverse type of testing this section provides, it's important that evidence submitted to the lab be collected and packaged correctly. Everything brought to the Trace Evidence section must be handled in a way that prevents loss and/or contamination. Nothing should exit or enter the evidence bags after they are sealed. And the best way to preserve evidence integrity is to make sure that the bags are sealed properly at the crime scene. Tape is generally used to seal containers. The tamper-evident tape serves two purposes. One is to ensure the container is sealed by placing the tape across the entire opening of the container, and also to provide an indication if someone has gained entry into the container by breaking the seal. However, in some instances, the tamper-evident tape may not be strong enough to make a secure seal. In those instances, a more aggressive tape, such as packing tape, may be used to secure the container and tamper-evident tape placed over the packing tape. The person packaging the evidence should place their initials across the tape and onto the package. Also, the contents, for example, John Smith's clothing, date, time, location, and person's name collecting and packaging the evidence should also be included on the package or container. Those items that are too large to package in a container, such as vehicle bumpers, doors, bicycles, etc., should have the areas of interest protected by covering with paper or something suitable to prevent loss or contamination. As a general rule, items from suspects, victims, and related crime scenes must never be placed in the same room or vehicle unless appropriately packaged and sealed. Once sealed, never open evidence containers prior to submission. It is also preferred that the evidence not be examined by local agencies prior to submission to the crime lab. If it has been examined and/or potentially contaminated, examinations for hair and fiber may not be performed by the GBI lab. Extreme precaution and consideration should be taken to avoid potential contamination and loss of trace evidence. Evidence once processed will not be processed a second time at the lab. Known head and pubic hair standards may be collected using appropriate labeled bags supplied with the GBI Sexual Assault Evidence Collection Kit or Hair Evidence Collection Kit. Vendor information can be provided by contacting the crime lab or checking our vendor resource list. An adequate hair standard contains a minimum of 25 hairs randomly sampled to represent the variation of characteristics within a single person's hair. Hair standards should be collected using a fine-toothed comb by repeatedly combing the area of interest, for example, the head or pubic area. If it is not possible to obtain 25 hairs by combing, additional hairs may be obtained by random pulling with the fingers. Do not use forceps. This could damage the hair. The subject may assist or perform the collection of additional hairs. It is important to collect hair standards as close as possible to the incident date, as length of time interval may complicate conclusions drawn from microscopical comparisons. It is required that clothing from suspects and victims be packaged separately to avoid contamination. It is preferable that clothing items from a single person also be packaged separately. This may be important in cases where the suspect and victim were known to have contact with each other and a transfer of hairs or fibers are expected on the outer garments but not on the undergarments. In the area of paints and plastics, questioned samples must be separated from those that are known. Likewise, samples taken from multiple areas of a vehicle or dwelling are required to be packaged individually. Never place samples directly in plastic bags or envelopes. Instead, use the paper pharmaceutical fold. It's good for anything small and is simple to make. Here's how it's done. Take a clean piece of paper and place your sample in the center. Carefully fold the paper in half, like this. Make sure not to push the sample out the ends. Next, fold the top edges of the paper down about 1/2 inch and crease. Then fold the top down another 1/2 inch. This step locks in the evidence and prevents loss. Fold the entire sheet in half once more and fold the tube in thirds. Tuck one end into the other, inserting the end between the outermost 2 layers of paper. The final step is to seal with tape around the center seam. Now the paper fold can be labeled and placed in an evidence bag and sealed. Never place paint directly into an envelope. It will leak. When collecting paint standards from vehicles, make sure to take an undamaged sample from within an inch of the damaged area on each separate damaged panel of the vehicle. Paint samples can be collected using a clean, sharp scalpel or knife to carve off all layers of paint down to and including the substrate. When possible, submit the entire item or portion of an item rather than disturbing a paint smear. Glass comparisons typically involve the analysis of small fragments of glass which may transfer to clothing or other surfaces and objects due to the fragmentation of breaking glass. A glass service would also be necessary when requesting the comparison of fiberglass insulation. It is important to collect standard glass from known sources such as windows or objects which have been broken. These should be packaged separately whenever possible. Fiberglass standards need to be collected from all contact areas at the scene. Even though the fiberglass may appear the same from one location to another, the fiberglass properties could be different, even within several feet. Another glass service provided by the Trace Evidence section is the determination of direction of force used to break a non-tempered window. This service can determine from which side a window is broken. If submitting broken glass for a determination of direction of force, remember to mark either the inside or outside surfaces of any glass remaining in the frame before removal, or remove the entire frame with any intact glass. The window must be reconstructed, therefore all of the broken glass needs to be submitted. Items such as clothing that need glass analysis should be packaged in paper bags. Larger items may be packaged using butcher paper and properly sealed to prevent loss or contamination. Smaller items may be packaged in small plastic canisters with lids. As with all trace evidence, questioned and standard samples should be packaged and sealed separately. Ziploc bags are useful for collection of standard glass pieces. However, a cardboard box or other suitable container should also be used to protect the individuals handling the glass evidence from any sharp edges or further breakage. Among the many services this section provides are fracture matches. Broken, torn, or separated items submitted to trace evidence must be packaged separately and in a way that prevents further damage. Also keep in mind that care must be taken when it comes to sharp objects like knives or glass. To prevent injury to those who will be handling the packages, always cover the sharp ends with cardboard before placing the objects in bags. And again, trace evidence's golden rule applies here. Items that are submitted for comparison should be bagged separately. The general materials request can encompass an assortment of evidence for identification or characterization. Examples include corrosive materials, bank security dye bombs, fire extinguisher residue, and pepper spray examinations. It is advised that you call ahead to see whether the crime lab can assist you with your particular request. During the discharge of a firearm, escaping gases from the weapon deposit gunshot residue, or GSR, on the skin of the shooter's hand, on the clothing of the shooter, and on other objects located in close proximity to the shooter. Included in this gaseous cloud of residue are particles composed primarily of primer residue. Analysis and characterization of the residue for the trace elements, lead, barium, and antimony, are used to indicate if a suspect has fired, handled, or been in close proximity to a weapon when it was fired. Time is of great importance. Sampling the subject as close to the event time as possible is critical if gunshot residue is to be preserved for analysis. Always use the pair of gloves included in the GSR kit. This prevents contamination of the test. Always complete all parts of the kit, including both stubs and swabs. Of vital importance is the negative control swab. This swab ensures the person performing the test did it correctly. Failure to utilize the negative control swab may affect the results of testing. For the most up-to-date information or answers to any questions this presentation did not address, please call the Regional Crime Laboratory serving your area or go to the GBI Division of Forensic Sciences website.